Hey everybody, Anthony here, and unless I change the name of this segment again, this is the Hollywood Burn, where I watch the garbage that Hollywood is churning out, so you don't have to. And today we are looking at Unfrosted, which is a Netflix original. Now there's a video on YouTube that you can watch after this one, where Jerry Seinfeld is being interviewed, I think by the New York Times, where he goes over his process on how to write jokes. And the particular joke that he brings up is a bit that he's working on about Pop-Tarts, and it's a joke that's taken him multiple years to hammer out. Like, he has that level of dedication and I guess affection for his craft, where he's willing to work on just one bit for 2 years to get it just right. And if you're a big Seinfeld fan, you also know that he's a big fan of cereals and other treats like that. So it's actually pretty fascinating that he loves them to such an extent that he's willing to make a fictionalized origin story for the Pop-Tart in movie form. I don't just try to bash movies here. I mean, I do because it's funny, but I also at least try to give a recommendation for who it's for. The only issue is I have no idea who this movie's for, because basically, I don't like to use this term, but it's for boomers. And there's a bunch of references in the movie that are references to people of that age and who grew up in that time period. I don't like to use the term because I feel it's usually used either incorrectly or in a derogatory way. Uh, but it's boomer references peppered throughout. Now, you would think that means it's for boomers, but I think my parents are boomers. I'm not totally sure, but they're of that age and they got the references, but they didn't really like the movie because it's such a goofy movie. The humor is basically for kids. So it's hard to know who this is for because the kids that would find this type of humor funny won't get the references, and the people who get the references kind of think this humor is just, like, I guess corny is the best word. You know, they like a little more, like, set up punchline, just vanilla humor. This is a little too wacky for them. Now, because this movie is so goofy, you're seeing a lot of people online bashing it and saying it's no good. Even people that wanted to like this movie, because there's not a lot of good comedies coming out of Hollywood these days, and we just sort of need something to fill that void. And I am not in the camp that says this is definitely bad, because if you actually look at the movie, there's actually a lot of funny lines that are in the movie. There's a line, for example, early on in the movie where Jerry's talking about this kid who spelled out the word ass using his alphabet cereal, and Jerry says, "That's going on his permanent record," which I think is pretty funny. So there's a lot of good lines in the movie. It's just that the plot is just so over the top and so corny and goofy that it overshadows the good humor that's in the film. So that's its problem. Then again, how good was this movie really going to be? Because at some point, somebody did say to themselves, hey, you know that movie, B movie? Let's get those people together again to make everybody laugh. Right, now's the point in the video where I sum up the movie for you, taking some of their jokes and adding in some of my jokes. So from this moment on, we're going with, a spoiler alert. So to give you an idea of how bland this movie is, it starts off with that trope of somebody telling you that they're going to tell you a story. Like, it's literally, there's this Asian kid in a diner, he's eating Pop-Tarts, and Jerry comes over to him and tells him that he's the creator of Pop-Tarts, and he's going to tell them the real story about how Pop-Tarts were created. So the movie stars Jerry Seinfeld, of course, who also directed the movie and co-wrote it with some of his buddies, like Spike Feresten, who wrote for Seinfeld. Jim Gaffigan plays the head of the Kellogg Corporation, and Jerry is the number 2 person at the company, basically his right-hand man. Amy Schumer is the villain, just like in real life. But no, she stars as Marjorie Post, the head of the Post Cereal Corporation. They're major rivals. So again, this movie wastes no time being goofy. It starts off, there's a annual cereal awards, an award show just for people in the cereal industry, which for some reason They miss the opportunity to call it the Golden Grams, and Kellogg's sweeps the entire awards. They win every award on the floor, but Marjorie Post, she is not upset about it at all, which makes Jerry suspicious. Shortly after the award shows take place, Jerry Seinfeld is walking by the Post facilities because it is near the Kellogg facilities, and he sees two young children dumpster diving into the Post dumpsters. And disappointingly, at this point in the movie, Jerry does not say, "What's the deal with kids diving in those dumpsters?" Honestly, these kids are one of the highlights of the movie, I think, because they don't seem like actual professional child actors, but they just have some sort of charm to them. I don't know, they just seem like real kids, but good at acting. I don't know how to describe them, you would just have to watch it. Like, especially the girl, I think she's really just sweet, and but not like Shirley Temple sweet. It's just like, she's like a female Mason Reese, to make a reference that nobody would get. But this freaks Jerry out because it means that the Post Company has a top secret weapon that they can use to put the Kellogg's Corporation out of business. Turns out both companies are using spies, spying on each other, and it was Jerry's research in particular that the companies are now using to try to manufacture a Pop-Tart. And this is one of the reasons why I don't think it's necessarily a bad movie, because that's actually really clever, because the humor is referencing this particular period of time. That's the focus of the entire humor. And so now the plot itself is just mimicking the nuclear arms race that was so popular at the time, so prominent in everybody's minds. Not popular, nobody wants to die in a nuclear holocaust, but you know what I'm saying. It's the Cold War, but instead of racing to see who can create nuclear armaments, they're racing to see who could flavor high fructose corn syrup. Instead of duck and cover with a desk, it's press and release with a toaster. So then there's this out-of-place scene where Walter Cronkite announces that Post is working on some sort of secret pastry, which I thought was an out-of-place scene, but it turns out in real life, Post actually announced that they were working on a Pop-Tart type thing before it was actually released, so I guess it was actual national news. And then Post actually brings in the kids from the dumpster to be their guinea pigs to try the new product. And Amy Schumer, like, she's a very stereotypical cartoony villain. Like, she's hitting her underlings with typewriters and, abusing them in all sort of ways. I'm surprised she didn't want a coat made of Dalmatians. Meanwhile, at Kellogg's, they're freaking out. They don't know what to do, so their big plan is to bring in their old ace in the hole who used to work at the company, Melissa McCarthy. Only problem is she's working at NASA now, so they have to go back down there and convince her to work for their company again. And Jerry does it by being like, "What, you're trying to go to the moon? What do you really think we're going to go to the moon?" And they put together an entire dream team to try to crack this one problem of how to make an at-home breakfast pastry. So they call a press conference. At the press conference, they announce their entire dream team, which is comprised of Tom Carvel, the ice cream magnate, Steve Schwinn, who makes bicycles, the guy who created Sea Monkeys, fitness guru Jack LaLanne, and the last person was Chef Boyardee. Mamma mia. Also at the press conference, however, is none other than an evil cartel of milkmen. Yes, that's right, milkmen. And they are upset because were this breakfast pastry to be introduced, it does not require milk, and thus that would cut into their sweet, sweet funds. So they are just standing there, leering with evil intent at the Kellogg Corporation, just daring them to cross the line, just so they can grab them by the crunch berries. And if they don't think they can squeeze, just ask the cows. And the movie includes a real-life guy that I love. I have no idea why I love this guy, but I do. A guy by the name of Thurl Ravenscroft, who you might know. You've definitely heard his voice every Christmas when you hear the words, "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch." That's him. So how does he relate to all this? He was actually the real-life voice of Tony the Tiger. He is a true blue American treasure, although for some reason in this movie he's British. He's played by Hugh Grant. And in the movie, he is upset with the Kellogg Corporation because he feels that the part of Tony the Tiger is sort of beneath him, and he wants to be a bona fide Shakespearean actor. And the Kellogg Corporation is not letting him put on a Shakespearean production, so that has got him pissed. There's some scene with some Puerto Rican sugar overlord that we don't really need to get into. You know the drill. But meanwhile, the dream team is not really working out. They, instead of working on the Pop-Tart, they just seem very confined to working in their original mediums. So the Schwinn bike guy is working on bikes, and Chef Boyardee is working on raviolis, as all of us Italians do. Jerry gets very frustrated, so he goes back to the dumpster for some reason, and it's there where Rice Krispies have gotten mixed with marshmallows. For some reason he eats them, and that's the genesis of Rice Krispies Treats, and that gets his wheels turning. What if we start combining everything? So he takes those nutballs, his dream team, all their kooky ideas, and somehow when they get combined, that's how the Pop-Tart comes into fruition. Now the technology of the Pop-Tart is about to be cracked. The milkmen are getting anxious, so the ringleader confronts Jerry with a clever threat about being able to break his bones easily because he doesn't drink enough milk. Now this is my favorite part of the movie because there's a little Easter egg here. Jerry, he of course is most famous, other than his show Seinfeld, he's most famous back in the 90s while he was doing stand-up. And he had this bit where he's talking about the expiration date on milk. And he's wondering how they know the exact day. Is it branded into the cows? Psst, there's your goddamn day. But the part of the joke that I like best is when he actually takes the persona of a cow and he says, what are the cows tipping them off as to what day it is? July 3rd. Cut to this movie, the milkman played by Christian Slater kidnaps Jerry by putting spoiled milk in his face, and the fumes are knocking him out. But before he goes unconscious, he says, when did this milk expire? And Christian Slater says, July 3rd. And I just thought that was such a great little throwback to his bit that nobody would get except me, so I just love it. So the milkmen capture him and torture him. He escapes, but right after he escapes, he is abducted again, this time by President Kennedy, who needs the help of the Kellogg's Corporation because he feels that American breakfast is under attack, because the Post Corporation is siding with Russians to get their sugar. I think this is just an excuse for Bill Burr to play John F. Kennedy, which he surprisingly does a pretty good job at, so no complaints here. The milkmen are still pissed, so their next move is to sow the seeds of rebellion, their target being Thurl Ravenscroft in particular. The head milker approaches him alone in a bar. Hey, you love Shakespeare? Well, call me Lady Macbeth. You won't be the King of Scotland, but you can rule over all the Fruit Loops you can handle. There's a lot of other stuff going on at this time, including the final experiments on the Pop-Tarts, during which Steve Schwinn dies in a fiery explosion. And this is the part of the movie where if you were going to point at how ridiculous it is, it's this part of the movie, because they hold a funeral for him, and there's just these over-the-top cereal references, like they bury his casket in a hole and fill it with milk, they throw cornflakes on it. It's just that level of what the fuck is going on. Like, he gets buried with full cereal honors, and like even the movie at this point is kind of like outright telling you, like, yeah, we know this is kind of like stupid and ridiculous. Also going on is like a secret affair between Kellogg and Post. Like, it's a Romeo and Juliet thing going on. Like, they're really not supposed to be fraternizing with the enemy. At this point, I have to mention that during the experimentations going on at the Kellogg Corporation, Chef Boyardee and the guy who invented sea monkeys create some sort of mutant ravioli that's still a baby, but it spies Kellogg and Post having their affair, and you get the impression that it just walked in on them having old people sex. Now the work on the Pop-Tart is all done, all that's left is to get it on store shelves and create an ad campaign. So they go to this marketing firm, which includes cameos that I'm not going to spoil for you, even though I've been spoiling everything for you in this movie up to this point. But their work is accomplished, and they sit around and smoke celebratory cigars. Totally inappropriate scene for Oppenheimer, I thought. But just when victory is in sight, an upset occurs when Post announces that they have won the toaster pastry arms race. Now, you don't get the sense that she was purposely manipulating Kellogg during the love affair portion, but either way, she does double cross him, even though their love seemed genuine, and now they are releasing their own product called Country Squares, which sounds like a name that I would call a hillbilly with no friends. As if this wasn't enough, Thurl Ravenscroft shows up to lead a union of food mascots to strike against Kellogg Corporation just as they're getting FDA approval for their Pop-Tart. This is the climactic scene in the movie, but it's another one of those scenes where it's just like, who is this movie for? Because it's referencing real-life politics, but it sort of seems to be supporting politics that the demographic that this is going after wouldn't support, because it references like a real-life event. But then on the other hand, it's just like maybe it's not, because you could interpret it as pro-union, I guess. I don't know. Does the rebellion succeed? I don't know. It's the climactic scene in the movie, so I don't want to spoil it for you. You'll have to watch it to find out. But after that, the Pop-Tarts and the post-country squares are moved to American stores, and they're both put on the shelves. And now it becomes this tense moment to see which product the children of America are going to pick. And wouldn't you know, the winner is Pop-Tarts in a landslide. Yes, I am a big enough weirdo that I bought Pop-Tarts to eat while I enjoy this movie, or attempt to enjoy the movie. Yeah, I don't know, I thought it was a nice little way to celebrate, but anyway, the movie's over. There is a little scene afterward where Jerry's character goes on Johnny Carson, which I thought was a nice little Easter egg throwback to Jerry starting off his career, getting called over by Johnny Carson on the Tonight Show while he's doing stand-up. And to close off the movie, the whole movie ends with just some goofy dance sequence that is cornier than the cereal Corn Pops. It's a very odd choice, I thought. I thought it was very un-Seinfeld-like. In fact, the whole movie just seems like something where Jerry would sit in a theater and spend the whole time making fun of it. That's my impression of the film. But anyway, that was Unfrosted. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I gave you a good impression of this movie during my review. So this is a newer channel, so I will take requests if you want me to review any other movie. I'm still working out the kinks. You know, just as long as I can get easy access to the movie, I'm pretty much down to watch what you want me to watch and make fun of it. So yeah, like and subscribe, leave a thoughtful and respectful comment, and I'll see you soon. Alright, thank you very much. Bye.